You settled in on not only Dante Moore from Detroit Martin Luther King High School being the number one quarterback, which is an accomplishment in itself in this class, but then also the number one player in the country. So talk to me, number one. We'll dive into Dante's game here in a minute, but just what was it that kind of led you, and what was the process like that led you to saying, okay, of all the kids we could go with, and there are plenty that were in the conversation, Dante Moore's the guy that we got to put number one.
Well, I think at the end of the day, his last 12 months at that position were the best in the country. And I think at that metric, it was by quite the margin. Whether you go to the 2021 season, 40-3 touchdown interception ratio, 3,000 yards, 70% completions, all the boxes you want checked, and a state championship, of course, by the way. We saw so much more improvement in his game. The processing was faster. The risk taking was greater, though it did not translate to a lot of turnovers. And we saw more functional athleticism from him on tape as well. And then after the season, he follows it up with an unbelievable 7-on kind of camp circuit where every time we saw him about 4 or 5 times this offseason, he was just better. By the time we got to June, he goes to Vegas and outthrows Nico and Malachi. And Jaden Rashada, all at the same event. And then a couple weeks later goes to the Elite 11 finals, and for us kind of runs away with the thing. Nothing we expected this cycle because of the depth at quarterback. Now, Nico and Arch Manning didn't go to the finals, so that is a bit of a caveat. But really, Dante was not going to be denied over those first few days in particular, where he was just far and away the best quarterback on hand from an accuracy standpoint. And then it became from like a consistent velocity standpoint, which is really one of the pseudo knocks on Dante's game, right? He's a shorter intermediate guy, controlled, high floor, accurate passer. But then we're seeing him on cork some stuff, and it looks totally different. And now we've got some answers to the few questions we had on Dante. So at every step of the way, he answered the bell, competitive. The demeanor never changed, quietly confident. So all the stuff off the field, kind of galvanizing leader type of personality as well, that you also want at that position, those were checked and, of course, vetted and confirmed independently thereafter. So really in the last 12 months, he had the best run. But then you go before that, he went to another state championship. He grew physically every year, and the production at that position grew every single year. And maybe the last thing that, if I had any doubt, the last thing that put me over the top is I was talking to his head coach a couple weeks before we were ready to go with the number one call. And I asked him about like memorable moments where he realized Dante was going to be one of these special players. Both situations he brought up, Brian, were losses. One was his first start. They're playing a big-time team out of state. I forget the team off the top. Apologies. And he's just getting beat up as a freshman. But he just kept getting up, and he ended up going like on the game-tying drive late in the game. And he said that was the first time that I was kind of like, okay, now I kind of get it. And then another example was a state title game where Dante was like blow for blow, or excuse me, it was a game against Carmel, Indiana, where it was a Hail Mary beat him. But before that point, Dante went like crazy, 450 yards, balls outside the numbers, down the field, just kind of the stuff that they didn't really ask him to do. He put the team on his back and helped them get in position to win a shootout that, of course, ended in a Hail Mary. And it was at that point where he was just like, this is the best quarterback in the country. And he said other coaches came up to tell him about that as well. So those were two losing scenarios, which I think is, for Tyrone Spencer, the head coach at King, says a lot about him as a head coach, but I think it says obviously a lot about Dante as well. When you don't point to the Elite 11 or something that's so easily tangible, hey, Michigan offered him in 7th grade, let's point to that. No, he pointed to 2 losses. So I think it tells you a lot about kind of Dante, the kid, the quarterback, not the thrower or the guy called in the plays in the huddle, but the football player and the person and the leader, which is those kind of benefit of the doubt moments that really help push somebody over the top. So all things considered, when you put the full body of work together, we felt most comfortable with him, especially with what we talked about earlier, the high floor stuff. I mean, that is the bread and butter Our QB1 last year was Cade Klubnik, the highest floor quarterback in the class. And right now we think Dante is that guy in 2023.
So we're not going to dive into like a full film analysis of Dante. This isn't what that show is about, but just, for people who maybe haven't seen a lot of Dante Moore, what are the things that as you break down the film and you look at his game, you say, okay, these are the things that make Dante physically, right? There's the mental stuff, the leadership, the toughness that you talked about, but got to be able to spin it, right? What are the things you see that in Dante as a player on film at the camps and make you say, okay, in a year loaded with top elite quarterbacks, this is the guy that we're going to hang our reputations on and say he's number one?
Well, you're seeing it here on the convenient video sample, Mr. Production there. It's polish. There's polish all over the place when you look at Dante Moore, whether it's the footwork in the pocket, manipulating and getting outside the pocket, but always square, willing to take that hit, all that toughness we talked about, but he's always square towards his target. The timing and anticipation is always on. And then as you get to his junior tape, which I believe this is, the ball placement just starts to get better. He's throwing guys open before they break at the top of the route. He's just kind of in full control of his game, while he's, again, physically gotten bigger too, because he was, I think, 85 pounds or so during this tape. Now he's over 200 pounds. So he's continuing to physically mature throughout all of this. But the polish, the accuracy, the timing really stand out. The decision making, which really is the fundamental of the quarterback position. You are the point guard out there. You set the table. All of that stuff really off the charts. And then when you get into the physical, not only the functional athleticism we talked about, but the delivery is concise. It's condensed. It's quick. The trigger can get from A to B really, really fast. And as he gets bigger, we're going to only see that strength become more of a strength. So I just think Dante, from a pure foundational element of what quarterbacking is supposed to be, is a scheme versatile, high floor prospect who's going to go out there and win you a ton of games at the next level. I really don't see a scenario where he doesn't come in, compete early, and then, rattle off, 25, 30 wins before he's all said and done at the next level.
So, John, obviously, a quarterback in today's era has to be able to play from structure. And all the things you talked about really fit well to playing within structure. I think the thing that really impresses me, too, about Dante is he also, for a kid who has the clean mechanics, the clean, it's like this kid's been taught how to throw a football. Like, he's got really clean footwork, really clean mechanics, consistent delivery, consistent release point. But he's also a kid that has shown he can play when he's got to go off script, if you want to use that word. I like to use the word street ball. Like, can you change your arm angle? Can you make a pass as you're getting hit, as you're getting, throwing down, and you're throwing across your body? He's shown ability to do that type of stuff too, which I think in a modern offense can really be the thing that separates you from the other quarterbacks, because you don't necessarily need that at Oregon when you're playing Arizona or Cal or Stanford. But to beat USC, to beat some of the teams that are going to be on the schedule moving forward, to get to the postseason, get victories, try and take Oregon to the next level, those are things you're going to have to do in those big moments, and that's something he's also shown an ability to do, I think.
Yeah, and it's probably the most underrated element of his game. He's known as this pocket passer, accurate, all that stuff. But yeah, nobody really talks about his ability when things do break down, whether it's a defensive lineman in his face or truly working outside the pocket. And I think that's another thing we kind of wanted to ask questions about in this process. And, we found out that he's been running with the track team in practice for 3 years. They don't let him compete in the meets. So, just little things you find out when you're digging in on these kids that really kind of help push a narrative over the top. Because, it's great to look at the strengths like you talked about. But, when you're splitting the hairs for the number one guy, it's like, okay, what are these weaknesses or perceived areas for improvement? And are they truly that? That's really the next step there, as opposed to just saying, oh, yeah, he can't move. He's not a great athlete. So he's just this pocket guy who has to go to a pro-style Stanford, Michigan type of offense. Not necessarily the case here when you dig a little bit deeper. And like you said, you see countless samples of him making work when things aren't perfect throughout that 2021 tape. So again, those boxes are checked if you look deeper or dig deeper in a classic reporter sense. We happen to do both. And again, it just kind of reinforced the narrative that this is probably our safest bet for the number one pick in the preseason. We'll see how it develops. And there's, again, a lot of great candidates. But going into the season, especially with the last 12 months, apexing at the right time, we felt like it was truly, Dante Moore at the top and then everybody else.